1996, Turkish intelligence informs Germany's domestic intelligence service that Mohammed Haydar Zammar is a radical militant who has been traveling to trouble spots around the world. He has already made more than 40 journeys to places like Bosnia and Chechnya. Turkey intelligence explains that Zammar is running a dubious travel agency in Hamburg, Germany, organizing flights for radical militants to Afghanistan. As a result, by 1997, German intelligence will launch Operation Zeitheit, an investigation of Islamic militants in the Hamburg area. The Germans will use a range of full intelligence techniques, including wiretaps and informants. Apparently, while Zammar was a teenager in Syria, he became friends with Marmoon Darkanzali, and the two of them joined the Muslim Brotherhood, a radical Muslim group banned in Egypt. In 1991, Zammar trained and fought in Afghanistan with the forces of the warlord Gulbuddin Hekmatyar of the Hizb-e-Islami army. In 1995, he fought in Bosnia against the Serbs while based in Zentia with other Mujahideen fighters. German intelligence apparently is familiar with at least some of Zammar's background because the New York Times will later report that Zammar had been identified by German authorities as a militant who frequented mosques in Hamburg and elsewhere. Operation Zeitheit will run at least 3 years and connect Zammar to many of the 9/11 plotters. By March of 1997, an investigation of an al-Qaeda contact in Hamburg by the Office for the Protection of the Constitution, otherwise known as the BFV, Germany's domestic intelligence service, begins at least by this time. Germany refuses to disclose additional details about the operation. The investigation runs into Haydar's background, along with Marmoon Darkanzali. Zammar will later claim that he recruited Mohammed Atta and others into the Hamburg cell. According to an article by the New Washington Post entitled, "This is the man who recruited the 9/11 hijackers," dated November 30th, 2018, which I will provide below in the description, quote, Mohammed Haydar Zammar's family moved to Germany when he was 10, and he first tried to participate in armed conflict in 1982, far earlier than was previously been reported. He traveled to Jordan in an attempt to enter Syria to join the armed wing of the Muslim Brotherhood, the Fighting Vanguard, which was engaged in an early uprising against the ruling Assad family. He was turned back by the Jordanian authorities, but on the trip, he met a man who would play a key role in his future, Mohammed al-Balbia, known as Abu Khalid al-Suri, who would later become a key figure in the current Syrian war. Al-Balhia's invitation, he made his first visit to Afghanistan in 1991 to receive military training at one of the militant camps being run by al-Balbia. Over the next decades, Zammar moved throughout the militant Islamist circuit, traveling regularly to Afghanistan, volunteering for a stint with al-Qaeda affiliated militants in the war in Bosnia, and visiting London, where he was befriended a Jordanian Palestinian preacher, Abu Qatada, a prominent figure long suspected by the United States of having links to al-Qaeda. Meanwhile, Zammar was developing a circle of followers at Hamburg's Quds Mosque, which had become a magnet for young Muslims in the city. Zammar said he failed to qualify as an imam or preacher at the mosque because he was unable to memorize the Quran, but he held regular gatherings with small groups of the men who went there to pray, seeking to convince them that he had a duty to wage jihad on behalf of Muslims worldwide and traveled to Afghanistan for military training. The first member of the Hamburg cell he remembers meeting was Ramzi bin al-Shibh, a Yemeni citizen who is now being held in Guantanamo Bay on suspicion of being involved in the 9/11 plot. Next, he met Mohammed Atta, the hijackers' alleged ringleader who piloted the first of the two planes that struck the World Trade Center towers. Zammar recalls Atta as a good guy with high moral standards. Then came the others, like Marwan al-Shehi, a citizen of the United Arab Emirates who steered the second plane that struck the second tower. Ziad Samir Jarrah, the Lebanese who piloted the plane that crashed in a Pennsylvania field after passengers overpowered the hijackers, and 4 others from the group whom Zammar also persuaded to travel to Afghanistan. According to Zammar, quote, "It was not easy, it took time. They were studying at the university. I was telling them, for example, someone is going to attack you, your honor, your property, while you cannot even use a pistol. There is no country in the world that does not have an army to defend itself, while we Muslims do not, end quote. Zammar's travels and contacts stirred the suspicions of the German authorities, who alerted the CIA and began monitoring his movements and telephone calls. But he continued to travel widely. Toward the end of 1999, Zammar made another visit to Afghanistan, overlapping with Atta and other members of the Hamburg cell making their first visit to the country and carrying with them their proposal to crash planes into American buildings, according to investigators. Zammar says the timing of his visit, so close to theirs, was a coincidence. He arrived shortly after they did, had no contact with them, and does not know where they or how they spent their time, he said. It was on this trip, he says, that he had his only encounter with al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden, whom he recalls with reverence. He speculates that bin Laden summoned him to meet because of his association with the men who were being groomed for the 9/11 attacks and wanted to check him out. He claims he had no further contact with bin Laden, Atta, or the others, and says he was acting surprised as anyone when the attacks occurred. Zammar continues to deny any foreknowledge of the 9/11 plot. God knows, he said, and in all honesty, I did not know anything about the 9/11 strike. They did not tell me anything. That was the conclusion reached at the time by German authorities, according to Guido Steinberg, who investigated Zammar's involvement in the attacks on behalf of the German government, as now a senior associate at the German Institute for International Security Affairs. The German investigation found that members of the Hamburg cell have been suspicious of Zammar, in part because he was very chatty. According to Steinberg, we discovered that his passport was full of Syrian stamps. The members of the Hamburg cell did not trust him. There was chatter that he might work for the Syrian authorities. U.S. investigators never reached a firm conclusion about Zammar's potential involvement, but also suspect and may have been proved too talkative to be trusted with intimate knowledge of the 9/11 plan, according to Ali Soufan, a former FBI agent who now runs the Soufan Center. Soufan would say, quote, "These people who run their mouths usually don't get information in advance, and there's a possibility that he may not know about the attacks. Maybe there was a lot of noise, but no meat on the case against him," end quote. Zammar acknowledged that he was an unlikely candidate for inclusion in a sophisticated plot, in which he would later say, "It would really be idiotic for someone who is planning on bombing America to come to me or someone like me and tell them about it. Total stupidity." Meanwhile, the CIA, the FBI, the U.S. military, and the Department of Justice declined to comment on this case. Later, a German newspaper will note that for much of the 1990s, the Spanish ran an impressive operation against a Madrid al-Qaeda cell led by Barak Yarkis, also known as Abu Dada. Wiretaps on Yarkis' phone had revealed that he was in regular contact with Mohammed Haydar Zammar and Marmoun Darkhanzali. Spanish intelligence shares this information with the CIA, but not with German intelligence. The CIA also fails to share this information with Germany. A top German intelligence official will later complain, "We simply don't understand why they didn't give it to us." Maybe there was a deeper link between the Syrian Muslim Brotherhood and the Hamburg cell, but to what extent and what intimate knowledge was kept from them?